anybody that is wondering, I have this wonderfully innocuous title of VP of Brand here at Whole Foods Market. And Catherine's absolutely right. My role is actually very broad in scope. So, in addition to all things creative and design, I also oversee things like marketing ops, new store opening support, community marketing, and also all of our in store experience efforts. So that is my role, and a little bit about me in case you're curious. I work at Whole Foods, so I'm definitely an eater, I'm definitely a cook. I'm also a distance runner, and I'm a total self improvement junkie. I live in the beautiful city of Austin, which is really kind of my adopted home. I've talked to Catherine a little bit about this, and I can tell you that I've lived all over the world. And to me, there's no better place in the world to meet creative people and to really explore creativity in everything from music to art to tech to food. So I'm very grateful that this is our headquarters and this is where I get to live my life even when it's 101 degrees.
That's good. You got to keep Austin weird, right? Isn't that got to keep it weird. So well, sure. Good. Well, thank you for that. I think that additional context is just everything that you oversee will really help, kind of wrap our minds around, the answers to some of these questions, because you see so much. Coming from GroundTruth, as you all heard Nicole, we are, looking at foot traffic trends and how consumer behaviors have changed. I would love your perspective on how this last year has really, changed your business, how you are adapting to consumer needs. Just love your perspective on that. Because I think, the CPG and the grocery space were maybe impacted differently than retail and restaurant and travel, right? Maybe fared a little bit better in some ways than other verticals.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just like all the verticals that you mentioned, certainly COVID had significant impacts on our business on pretty much every level. And one of the largest, I think, was just the way in which our customers, Whole Foods customers specifically, changed their shopping habits almost overnight. So, for example, and I pulled some numbers here, pre-pandemic, use of online shopping for our customers was barely over 10% of their budget on average. During the pandemic, so in that last sort of year, the average actually changed to 50%. So, a 40% leap, like almost, at least within 7 days, is pretty staggering. So, as you can imagine, it affected everything from sort of supply to assortment planning to certainly to delivery logistics, store support, even marketing. Big impact for us that we suddenly had to go from like the age-old mission of we need to drive traffic and we need to drive demand to physical store to really kind of walking back and saying, how do we help customers stay safe and really understand how to access and use delivery while we're building that plane that we had not focused on. So what is lovely about this, and I'm sure it will be a theme today, is that there are lots of horrible things that happened as a result of COVID, but I actually think that it forced a kind of urgent creativity across the functions in our organization, but I think probably in many industries. And I can say that at Whole Foods, certainly we didn't do everything perfectly, but I'm proud to say that, we were able to adapt to our customers' needs without compromising the things that are really true to our DNA. So things like quality standards, that's what we're known for. That's what our customers trust us for. But also things internally like team member happiness. We at the end of the day are totally team member dependent. So we made a lot of effort on that front as well. So that was during COVID.
Right.
That was one big thing.
So what of the things that, obviously delivery is here to stay and pickup is here to stay, what are the sustainable items that, you see going forever? What are
Yeah.
things that maybe you slow down a little bit in the consumer behavior? It maybe isn't as much of a need as it was in 2020 as we pull out of this thing.
Great question. Yeah, I definitely think, there's no doubt that delivery will continue to be an important part of our customers' repertoire, just in terms of how they shop. But what's really interesting is that as we come out, sort of re-emerge from this pandemic, and I think Nicole talked a little about like just the urge and her personal urge to get on a plane and go.
Right.
What we're seeing is, at least for our customers in particular, I think our customers are leaning back into what makes Whole Foods, which at the end of the day, two words, it's our stores. Our stores are that. So it's absolutely true that our customers, a lot of them learn to shop online and they really appreciate the convenience. And that is something that we hope to continue to roll out in partnership with our friends in Seattle. Um, but we also see that amongst our brand loyalists, the majority actually want to return to their pre COVID routines of in store shopping. So they have the access, and they have the ability to do that, but they're actually, we hear over and over again in the research that we do, that they have this desire to come back to the things they love about Whole Foods. So just to give you some examples, and I personally relate to this as well, people miss our hot bars. They miss like going to the store and looking at that beautiful, colorful produce section and picking their own stuff. They miss, one of the things they miss the most, samples. People love the samples. And so that's something that we're talking about. Like, how do we get back to that in a safe and responsible way? They, in particular, really also like sort of that leisurely walk through the store. When we looked at just time in store for people that were coming, what we're seeing is that is growing because people like go with a list, but they also like discovering new items. It's a little bit of an adventure. So that on top of all the social interactions with our, I will say, very unique employees and sort of that tribe of customers that makes Whole Foods, there's a longing to get back to that. And, just as the brand person here, I really think, that we say this a lot, but it's so true that for us, we're just so much more than a transaction. We're so much more than a grocery store. It's good and bad because we have to invest a lot into it, but we really have to focus back on our experience. We have to think about, how do we go back to being a discovery engine? How do we like reclaim that idea that for many people, like Whole Foods is the place they go to like learn about new ingredients and
Right.
to like actually learn how to cook with them. So we just want to make sure that as we go forward and extend things like our delivery footprint, we're not doing that instead of
Sure.
investing in our in-store experience, because that's truly where our magic lives.
Right. I think that's what a lot of brands are have struggled with, right? Like they're in this virtual world. And even, at our company, any other companies, like how do you make that connection when it's virtual or when it's delivery? Like you lose so much of the connection with whether it be your coworkers or your customers. Like there is so much to be said with, connecting with people in person. Um, so I think that that's great that you're not just abandoning the in-store piece. That's a strong foothold for your brand. That's great.
Yeah, and Catherine, and I know as we go through this day, I will be curious to learn, for me, the big question is, can you and
Mhm.
should you be striving to deliver the same sort of the magic of in-store with the magic of what you can give people digital? I think both experiences can be magical, but I don't know the answer to should they be the same.
Sure. Or the same focus, like, the same
Right.
level of effort. That's great.
Exactly.
Yep. Um, have you had to adjust your messaging in terms of whether that's media messaging, internal messaging to your team members? What has that shift in messaging looked like to inform internal and external efforts?
Yeah, I'll start with external. I think external for us, very quickly during the pandemic, we had to do what everybody else had to do. We just had to sort of figure out what are the operational consequences for us, what are not only sort of the local ordinances that require us to sort of inform customers of certain things, but what are the rules that we want to put into place, both internally and externally, and how do we get that message out? So it all of our mechanisms went into sort of inform mode. Now, as we come back out, I hope that what you're also seeing is that we're doing what we can to slowly sort of refocus, not so much on information, but on inspiration.
Mhm.
So we really want to like just kind of turn the table a little bit and get people re-energized around just great food experiences and having those connections. So we're doing our best to enable that in all of our channels, while at the same time, one of our biggest challenges is that the rules are different depending on store, depending on region, and depending on what's happening in a particular market. So there's certainly a temptation to just, I'm tempted as well to just flip the lights and just say, we're back and we
Yep.
welcome you back. But we also want to do that in a way that is responsible to the second part of your question, to our team members. And we're being very careful to make sure that those team members know that they are actually our first priority. So if there is any hesitation on anybody's part to either come to work in a certain way, that is not something that we shut down. We listen to it. We try to accommodate every request. We don't yet have sort of one policy that applies to everyone. It's just too difficult
Sure.
to have that. So it is a little bit more time consuming, but we are definitely internally trying to lean on the fact that one of our values is team member happiness. So we really need to do what we can in a moment like this to live that value and to explicitly message it out.
Mhm. So I've done several of these brand innovator chats, and all of the most successful companies that I've listened to, like they start with their team. And if they have a happy team, it translates to happy customers, but like buy more, it just like is a snowball. So I think that is the perfect place to focus, because it's a snowball and it all starts from there.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's very reassuring to hear, because I sometimes think there is, I'm not sure that the whole world operates in that way. So there's, sometimes a question of, are we too hyper focused on that value?
Right.
But I don't think it's something that anyone here is willing to compromise. So
Right.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, definitely. And on the inspiration piece, it makes total sense that that's a place where you are focused on. I had read, this was probably several months ago now, about how Pinterest had increased their user base by like 100 million people or something during the pandemic, because of that inspiration and wanting to learn anything, whether that's cooking or whatever the case may be. So it
Yeah.
makes sense that, the inspiration is where you're seeing a lot of growth and a lot of engagement. I think that's what you're seeing. Even Nicole mentioned seeing a lot from the, sports sector. People are learning a new hobby or learning something else.
Yeah, and just to pick up on your comment about Pinterest, this is another trend we're seeing coming out of the lockdown. Sort of like shopping online. It's certainly true. A lot of us learned how to cook during the pandemic. I mean, like all of a sudden everybody knows how to make sourdough bread, how to
Sure.
poach your eggs, or like, even for us, like suddenly people know how to have their veggies as a main dish,
Sure.
which
Sure.
is very different. But while what we see is that while certainly cooking is a pandemic acquired skill for a lot of Americans, we also see something that one of our folks talks about is cooking burnout. Like that routine of cooking the same thing. I don't know if you can relate to this, but like the process and the effort in planning and prepping and cleaning, just kind of the repetitiveness of all of it. Like we just
Yep.
see people are a little over it. And to everything that was discussed before, we do want to be out. We want to be
Right.
inspired. We don't just want to eat to live. We want to kind of actually want to be inspired by our plates. We want to sort of have a change from sauteed broccoli and the cauliflower main that you learned from master class somewhere.
Yeah.
So, I do think that at first we didn't really have a choice. So we did make the most of it, and that's pretty awesome. But I do think as we come out of survival mode, for us, it's really important that we keep in mind that we not only help people survive, like our role as kind of a badge brand, like we help people thrive. Like
Sure.
we actually talk about ourselves as a feel good sanctuary. Like we want people genuinely to feel great about food.
Right.
So we're doing all kinds of stuff to try to reimagine what we can do just, with things like our venues, which are like the little eateries in the
Mhm.
store and things like that. Like how can we help give you a little piece of that back so that when you're not in the mood to
Sure.
go learn something or execute in your own kitchen, you always have that as an option.
Right. I'm happy to stay at home and cook. I just don't want to unload the dishwasher. If I could have an unload the dishwasher fairy, like we would stay home and cook all the time. It's like, I think that's one thing that I noticed, especially when you're working from home. That's like an additional meal that I hadn't been doing, right? Like, so that's you know, an additional meal, an additional something that I'm not going out to a restaurant or hadn't been.
Totally.
So,
Hot breakfast. Who
right.
knows?
Who knew?
Yeah,
Who knew it didn't have to be at a granola bar on the train?
that's right.
So your 365 private label recently got a brand refresh. Can you talk about, what was the objective or the vision for the refresh, or what was the impetus for it?
Sure. Yeah, that refresh actually started before or was at least established as something that we wanted to do before the pandemic. And as you can imagine, it took was slightly delayed, took quite a hit because of all the supplier issues and all of that during it. But the intent of that refresh was really twofold. One is, one of our goals is to really help people understand the value of great food. And 365 is sort of like, I'll call it a badge, or like, like a good housekeeping seal of approval. That's how we think of it. That helps us merge good value with incredible quality standards. So we had the brand in existence, but what we saw with the packaging that existed on shelf is that while it may have been our intent all along, nobody got that. Nobody was getting that messaging. So you had sort of what people perceived as, oh yeah, this is like Whole Foods. Whole Foods is lesser than brand. So now I'm at Whole Foods, and because I don't want to spend all that money, I'm going to buy the compromised house brand versus we certainly had a lot of brand fans, but even the brand fans told us, there's probably a little bit of something less with this brand than with the regular Whole Foods stuff. So obviously, we only have two house brands, and that's 365 and Whole Foods Market. It was really important for us to make sure, because quality standards is a fundamental part of what we do. Half the company makes decisions based on quality standards. We really wanted to make sure that we do a better job of telling that story. So not only did we do the packaging refresh, we tried to then do a lot of marketing to help people understand that it's really not an either or decision. You're not trading down. You're just kind of getting great value for pantry essentials. So it is very much sort of our access brand. We want to make it more attainable. We are quickly now, with things revving back up, expanding across categories so that you don't have to make 3 trips, or you don't have to overspend for things that may not be as important to you. So that's sort of our efforts in that area have been engineered to try to, one, better communicate to you what the role of that brand is within our portfolio, and secondly, to give us internally a focus for how we want to innovate moving forward.
That makes sense, because I think you see that in other places in your life, like your clothing, right? Like maybe your basics, you don't spend as much, but you want like a really great jacket or a really nice steak, right? So like I think it's just the equivalent of what you see in your life in other places too.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
So you touched on this a little bit. So brands and retailer loyalty during this time, maybe tested a little bit, maybe less so in the grocery vertical. Maybe people are more tried and true. Maybe, delivery, they know what their delivery service is that they enjoy. But what changes have you seen for new versus repeat shoppers, or in-store versus delivery? I know you kind of mentioned that your delivery has skyrocketed, but talk to us about new versus repeat customers.
Yeah. So our repeat customers, and this is sort of bucks kind of industry trends a little bit, our repeat customers are what I will call borderline fanatic. Like, we have almost irrational levels of brand loyalty in certain areas, which is wonderful and very hard to explain sometimes. But we're very thankful for these customers. They did not, once they could get out of their homes, they were the first back into our stores, and they were sort of protected from any kind of attrition because of the intense emotional sort of loyalty that they have to our brand. Our new customers, we learned that on average pre-pandemic, we're shopping about 8 different retailers for their groceries. So what we learned is, while they didn't have that much brand loyalty to us, to be honest, they didn't have very much brand loyalty to any other brand either. And the way that we think about it is that our goal is not necessarily to convert you and make you believe that we are the only brand. We fully accept that we are not a brand for everyone, but we do believe that we have quality superiority versus our competitors. So if high quality food is really important to you, what we want to try to do is educate and prove to our new customers that is an area of focus for us, and that's an area that is unrivaled within the industry. So you'll see we did some website updates. A big initiative for us this year is to really kind of unpack and start telling our quality standard story in store and digitally more loudly, because we have it. We just need to make sure that we are communicating it in a way that is relevant and understandable for the average customer.
Right. And I know you can't speak a ton to some of the cool innovation that's happening with our friends in Seattle. Anything you can share about Palm Scan? I know it's being tested. Is there anything that you can sneak peek? Anything like that? Yeah.
I can say I will say, gosh, everybody was a little bit concerned, like, my gosh, what's going to happen with this partnership between Whole Foods and Amazon, including our little like culture of like hippie executives, very concerned about this. Never have we been so grateful to have had the fortunate timing that we have. And I got to tell you, like, this is they have taught us, Amazon has and continues to teach us so much about technology, about how to innovate, about how to iterate faster. It has really been an incredible partnership. So what I can share is what I'll say is that on Palm technology specifically, I think you read a little bit about this in the press, but we've been working with in Amazon on coming up with ways to remove friction. So, for example, we know that when you come to our stores, one of the big pain points for people is like they got to stand in line, they have to look for their card, you have to then do your Prime code. All of that is not a very happy experience. So as a brand, a lot of our partnerships with Amazon and a lot of our innovation moving forward with Amazon is less focused on sort of like what else can we do to just surprise and awe you and delight you. Whole Foods already knows how to delight you with food. What we are focused on is what are the things that we can do, like Palm technology, that will actually remove some of those friction points. At the end of the day, I actually, I always believe, I say this to my team all the time, I think people do want faster transactions, but I don't think they want fast food. So we have to find a way to give them that beautiful food experience sort of as delightfully as possible. And things like Palm technology are going to help us do exactly that.
Mm-hmm. We are living in the future.
We really are.
Right? Like, that's crazy. I mean, when you can have your delivery of your groceries to your doorstep or just wave your palm at the grocery store, we are truly living in another time. So,
yeah, totally.
So obviously, when you mentioned just everything that your role covers, what can vendors and partners help you do to be more thoughtful, other than media executions, right? Are there in-store experiences or creative, or what could vendors be more thoughtful in the way that they come to you with ideas?
Yeah, I think for us, a big thing is we are constantly looking for new ways to engage our customers in new way, in sort of whether that's new channels, whether that's specific creative tactics, what have you. We're always trying to figure out sort of, I'll give you 3 areas that we're really focused on. One, how do we better communicate and deliver quality standards to our customers? People sort of have this loose association with Whole Foods as high quality stuff. How can we reinforce that? How can we educate the world? Our purpose at the end of the day, is to nourish people and the planet. We are a mission-based company. So things that would help us sort of activate against that mission is just sort of an area that I think is really important. Another area, and especially as we come out of this unusual time in our lives, is we're our number one equity when we ask people is that we help them live a healthier lifestyle. That is literally, it's a metric we track. It's something that we get a lot of credit for. So we see that sort of as a responsibility. Mm-hmm. How are we helping people live a healthier lifestyle? And for us, by the way, healthy is not like wellness, like physical health. It's very much well-being, social, emotional. You're part of a tribe, all of that. So things that help us kind of activate in a different way, or even understand what it means to be healthy, in a different way is really fascinating. And then to your point of like, like every retailer, we want to delight our customers in every channel. So we obviously have the good fortune of, having exposure to a lot of partners because of Amazon and because of the work that we've done in the past, but we're always open to learning more and trying different things.
Yeah. And how far are you planning for some of these programs, right? Like I know under your umbrella, there's new store openings. I'm sure that you're planning for those years potentially in advance. What
Yes.
are there different initiatives? And I'm sure this is a loaded question. Like how far in advance are you planning for different initiatives?
Yeah, so certainly for big things that involve real estate and
Sure.
things like that or new tech or anything like that, that's really a very long planning cycle, years and years and years and years. Also now, we have to go through some processes to make sure that Amazon has it's an approved vendor with Amazon, so that extends our cycle a little bit. In addition to that, on a marketing standpoint, we're really a lot like fashion. We plan a year out. We're thinking about trends, we're thinking about activations, we're thinking about labor implications, all of those things literally a year out. That does not mean that we don't spontaneously make changes.
Sure. I think if last year told us anything, we need to be nimble.
Absolutely. So we try to stay agile, but for the most part, we really try to look a year ahead. And I can say, certainly in my role for the things that we do in marketing, we have a lot of commitments. So to do something new, it does take a year to fully understand the value and then to be able to get the organization aligned that this sort of new activity is worthwhile.
Sure. So this is my favorite question, to make you look inside your crystal ball a little bit. Kind of what are your predictions for the rest of 21 and maybe even going into 2022? I don't think anyone last year probably predicted what was going to happen. So it's always fun to see if you could predict the future in this new world.
And do you mean specifically, Catherine, on food
or just the industry, right? Maybe just take your sector, the grocery store or technology, if there's other technologies that you could see coming down that maybe your competitors are doing, anything like that.
Yeah, so I'll take both actually. And so I have been thinking about this question a little bit. And I think from a technology standpoint, I think there's going to be continued hunger, especially for retailers, on options. So I think people are going to want to shop in many different ways. And that's both to better enable convenience, which is certainly a lot of innovation happens there, but also to enhance sort of delightful experiences. I think people are going to want to be able to have both. So I don't think that there will be a slowdown in the incredible things that come out of that, whether there's incredible things or things like palm technology or things like, new ways to think about venues and ordering and team member engagement. And the other thing I think will happen a lot for marketers specifically is we're going to have to figure out how we can really kind of embrace all the revenge living. I'm sure you've heard about this trend happening out there. I think holiday is going to be huge this year. A lot of people really missed that, including myself last year. So, whatever our holiday plans were in the past, we're really thinking about, are those the right plans? Do we need to amplify certain things? Do we need to turn down other things? So that's an area where I think that there will be an incredible innovation.
Sure.
And it's a little thing, but I do think this continued activity of like just kind of a little bit of cooking fatigue is going to start to, just because you know how to do something doesn't mean you want to do it for the rest of your life. So um, I do think that it'll be interesting to watch as people, especially as people return to work. A lot of people are going back to work, how sort of they start to use their time differently and
Mhm.
what impact that has on industries like, learning and personal growth that require time investment.
Right. I think it's going to be, figuring out what the new balance is across your whole life, right? I think it's like, how many days a week do you want to go into work? Is it, 2 or 3? And being at home versus being in work, cooking versus going out. Like, what are the new balances that everyone is going to kind of start to feel their groove a little bit as we get back to normal?
If you figure it out, can you please text me?
I
Because I have not figured that out.
know. And there's no timeline, no rush. We'll slowly get into our groove, I think. We have one question. Someone says, can you talk more about palm technology? Not sure there's anything
Um,
specific this person.
what I can say about palm technology in general is what it is, which is basically, a biometric scan that connects your Amazon credentials with literally your palm. So when you scan your palm, sort of like you scan your phone when you check in for a flight, what it does is it essentially takes in all your information, including your Prime member number. And then as you shop the store, it automatically sort of connects what you buy with that technology. So you don't have to do things like stand in line to check out. So it's very much in test mode right now. This is another one where it's a very interesting dilemma for us because so much of our experience is team member experience, just the interaction that you have with our team members. So while we want to give you the convenience, we have a lot of customers saying, I want Amazon out, because I want this like weird technology following me around. So
Is
it's
it
an opt-in.
is it only in the one store in Seattle, or is just in the one?
Yeah, it's being tested. And
Yep.
as you can imagine, yeah, it's interesting to learn about how to optimize the technology, but it's also really interesting to kind of see how this could be game changing